you participating.
All right, we are live and want to welcome everybody to Women for Progress, Mississippi's Man Cave Hour. I'm your host, along with Dr. Johnny B. Gillian. Uh, Today's guest, we have Attorney Terry Davis, Dr. Quentin Holmes, and we're waiting on Mr. Charles Wells, who should be in a minute. Today's topic is, and I hit the wrong button. Today's topic is Black voter support for the 2024 national elections, the election crisis of the president, the U.S. House of Representatives, Senate, and the Supreme Court. And here's John.
Okay, guys, we have a very timely topic this evening. These are issues that are plaguing the upcoming national election, uh, both for the president, the U.S. House of Representatives, and the U.S. Senate. And in this election, Black voters will play a key role in determining who will be the next president of the United States, the ruling majorities in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. Black voters have historically favored the Democratic Party. However, there's evidence that they will continue to do so, but there's also evidence of some erosion among the group. According to Pew Research on April 24th, 83% of Black voters identify with or lean toward the Democrats, and 77% of registered voters say that they prefer Biden, the Democratic candidate, over Trump, the Republican candidate in the 2024 presidential election. These statistics suggest some increasing support among Black voters for Biden since August 2023, when the New York Times Siena College polls reported that 22% of Black voters in the 6 battleground states deemed as the most important in the 2024 national election: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, said that they would support Donald Trump in this year's election. 71% said that they would support Biden. The magnitude of this finding remains staggering. Pew Research recent national poll described the contest as a virtual tie between President Biden receiving approximately 48% of the vote and former President Donald Trump receiving 49%. Black voter preference for the Republican candidate in the polls has been as high as 23%. In a New York Times Siena poll published on March 2nd, 2024, and a CBS YouGov poll published on 3/3/2024. The level of Black support for Donald Trump was 23%, and in a daily Coast Civic poll published on 3/13/2024, it was as low as 8%. The last time that we've seen percentages this high for Republicans was in 1960 at 29%. That's more than 60 years ago. These are some of the issues that's going to impact this coming election. Former President Donald Trump is facing 4 criminal indictments, 2 relating to alleged efforts to overturn the result of the 2020 election, 1 accusing him of retaining classified documents upon leaving office, and 1 about alleged hush money paid to an adult film star, Stormy Daniels. And moreover, he promises retribution and to be a dictator if he wins. By a 4-seat majority, Republicans control the U.S. House of Representatives, with Make America Great Again, MAGA, dominating the party. Their agenda has been pro-guns, pro-life, pro-Russia, pro-Trump, pro-fascism. On the other hand, they have been anti-immigration, except for Norway and Sweden, anti-NATO, anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion, anti-social security, anti-Obamacare, ACA, healthcare access. They are anti-free speech, except for their speech. Democrats, with a 2 Senate majority, control the U.S. Senate. Under Republican control during the Trump administration, the Supreme Court was stacked with a 6-3 conservative majority that led to the overturn of what was once given as a constitutional right for 50 years. the right of women to choose to terminate their pregnancy. The conservative wing of the court declared that they were anxious to revisit other precedent-setting rulings that they thought were wrongly decided by the court. The U.S. Supreme Court appears to be out of control, and only Congress can restrain it. There's the appearance of corruption and partisanship. Clarence Thomas' lavish mobile home and GOP-sponsored vacations. Alito's flying the U.S. flag upside down, a symbol of Donald Trump's January 6, 2020 Stop the Steal rally or insurrection. And this week, the flag of the white Christian nationalists was flying at Alito's beach home, another flag flown by insurrectionists during the January 6th insurrection. Joe Biden, the incumbent and Democratic presidential candidate, is facing a backlash from his political base, youthful voters and minorities, for supplying arms to Israel and his full embrace of the country's prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and his war policies after Hamas, the ruling party of the Palestinian Gaza encampment, attacked the country, killing approximately 1,200 Israelis and taking approximately 200 hostages on October 7, 2023. Israel's response was to rout out and kill Hamas. Has been devastating, with more than 35,000 Palestinians killed, the majority being women and children. The entire civilian population has been uprooted, with their homes and institutions destroyed by munitions from the U.S. and is now facing famine. There are international claims of genocide as the population is facing famine, the lack of food, water, and medicine. Protests are now occurring nationwide. Many in our communities see President Biden and the U.S. as complicit. According to the Center for Politics on May 27, 2024, Democrats received 95% of the Black female vote in 2022 elections, and it was as high as 93% among Black males. But since the 2022 election, support for Democrats have softened to a point that the projected election results favor Donald Trump and the Republicans, MAGA. The greatest degree of erosion for support for Democrats have been that of Black males. The Pew Research Center reported in January that 27% of Black men in their poll said that they supported Trump, while 17% of Black women said that they would, and that there would be two possibilities. They would either vote for Trump or choose not to vote. So the questions this evening, I want to start off with asking this question. Does any of these issues matter to Black voters and how they might vote? I want to start that question with you, Quentin.
Thank you, Dr. Gilleylen, and hello and good evening to my colleagues on this panel. When I think about that question, of course, I put it in perspective of teaching at a HBCU, and when we talk politics, and when I listen to the issues that concern them, it doesn't seem to be catching traction as much as one would think in terms of the things that are really eye-opening with Donald Trump and the MAGA team, and likewise not eye-opening with what the current President Biden has done in terms of his accomplishments. And this is important why I think, and when I get feedback from them, is that a lot of the things that successes that Joe Biden has been able to highlight and tout, it really doesn't hit home with the Black male on an individual basis. They know collectively it may happen, but for the most part, it doesn't have a direct and noticeable impact on them directly. Even when I've heard one commentary about the student loan debt, and putting a relief for the student loan debt in. Is well, if you don't have any student loan debt, and then that policy, while it may be viewed as good, it doesn't benefit that individual. And when you take it to the other side with Republican and looking at Donald Trump, some of those issues, some blacks can be looking at the fact of how the justice system has done them. They have a slighted view of the justice system when we look at, former President Trump and its indictments. And they may buy into what Trump been pushing out, the fact that I'm getting messed over in the justice system, just like, blacks get messed over in the justice system. So they may not agree with him, but apparently by the data and the polls, it's not moving the needle effectively away from Trump or to really highlight the fact of what makes him not qualified to be president. So the answer to the question simply, and there was a lot just to say this, no, I don't think it matters to them about the vote and whether they will or will not vote. I don't think it's enough just to move the needle.
Terry, I want to ask you the same question. You're in a different part of the country. Are you seeing a similar situations as Quentin is seeing?
Necessarily quarrel with, let's say per se, a poll, but I get the impression that somehow there's been a highlighting of black male voters, and historically, the lowest percentage of voter turnout has basically been black males. Black women has always surpassed black males in terms of voting, and to highlight a reduction in black male voting is literally looking at the de minimis part of the voting population as far as African American goes. So I'm a little concerned about the evidence that would suggest that somehow black males are turning to the Republican Party. And to answer your question, does it matter? I think it really does matter, and everybody I've talked to seems to suggest that it matters. Because the more this country moves toward that conservative movement, which is very obvious, and you've pointed out in your narrative, that doesn't spell good things for African Americans. Whether you black male or black female, it's just not a good thing. And so therefore, I think it matters. And eventually, when we get down to the brass tacks and when we get closer to the election, what you're seeing now in terms of a reduction in black male voters, I think is probably just going to dissipate.
Well, Terry, one of the things is that, I agree with you absolutely. One of the things that we've seen is that in the 2020 election, the percentages for black males that did vote in the election, in the 2022 election, it was 93%. And I agree with you that black males don't turn out in the numbers that we see for black women. But what's interesting though about this is that similarly, we've seen the numbers either for Trump or against Biden, one or the other. We've seen that number soft for black women as well. And so, Charles, why is it that you think that these significant issues, significant national issues, are not gaining traction in the black community?
John, I was watching a show yesterday, and I think we referenced earlier in the show about the amount of student loan debt forgiveness that has taken place up under Joe Biden. I was talking with a young lady just the other day, and she was really upset. She was saying that the young blacks would not vote for Biden because of the student loan issue. Then I began to share with her that the dollar amounts of the billions of dollars of loans that had been forgiven, which is probably like 41 billion or something. It was a huge 131 billion dollars, I think. It was like 44 million individuals' loans had been forgiven. And she said, well, I was not aware of that. Earlier this morning, I was listening to a show, and they were talking about the economy and how most people in this country think that we are in a recession. And I guess if someone is having issues, and many people in this country do have financial issues, I think nationwide the poverty rate in this country is like 12.6%, I believe, and I think in Mississippi it's like 19.1%, and just in Jackson I think the rate of poverty is like 39%. However, the point I'm getting at is that the U.S. economy is probably one of the most strongest economy in the world right now. It's been that way since COVID. And the question that you are throwing out is that, how is it that people do not know about that? We listen to polls, and at times, like someone mentioned earlier in the program, how accurate are these polls, or the way, how is it that does the news media or do the communication outlets in this country present the information in a manner so that we will have uninformed voters that will lead us to an election in November where it may be a close election between someone that appears to want to have this country's interests at heart compared to someone that tried to overthrow the government. And as you mentioned earlier, he has appointed individuals to the Supreme Court that our Senate approved that could change the whole politics of this country. And so I think is that the way that the news media or the information in this country, how it is shared or how it is not shared, to educate people in this country with what's really happening. Now, the challenge that I have is that I don't have a solution to that problem right now as far as information not being shared correctly. I'm hopeful that as we get closer to the election, we have more debates between Trump and Biden, that more information will be shared. So to answer your question, John, I think it's a lack of information sharing. I think that information sharing is done on purpose so that we will have a close election, and that news outlets and things can charge quite a bit of money for advertising through November. However, I do think that they would not be successful as far as the Republicans. I hope not, because I think this whole country's history and its current form is at stake right. It is at stake right now.
I'm gonna tell you something that you said, Charles, that's troubling to me. I just completed a survey of socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers in 5 states for USDA. And what comes out of that survey, and has been coming out, this is the second time I've done that study for them. And what comes out of this survey is lack of information, not being informed. I have dissertation students who's doing studies in the Mississippi Delta. When we talk about transportation, you know what the word is? Lack of information. When there were dollars available to assist Black farmers, the money was scooped up in 2 weeks by white women, wives of white male farmers. The money for disadvantaged farmers of color was scooped up because the majority group, the dominant group, was prepared when the money became available. Cut all the Black farmers out. My dissertation students who are studying healthcare, health disparities, all of it, transportation, all of it is linked, comes back to the conclusion that's being drawn is that we are not being informed. And you and I, because I know we do it, every time we make the tennis court, we discuss what's being discussed in the news today.
We do. Mm-hmm.
We do that. And so the information is out there. It's being put out there. But why aren't we getting it? So, Joshua, My question that I would like for you to attempt here is, are there any of the issues that we just mentioned, or will any of them catch on? Will any one of them catch on? Would any one of them gain traction to where it would become a recognized issue inside of the Black community?
Well, I think they're already all hot topic issues within the Black community. The election is something which is going to affect each and every last one of our lives. So it's one of those things where people are already just fed up. You have Black intellectuals who are seeing the situation in Israel, who are seeing the U.S. Complicit in these actions. You have the lack of faith coming from those who were promised things like the student loan agreements, the student loan forgiveness, like they were also promising, the first-time home buyer agreements, which all of them didn't go through. What you're really seeing is just a disaffected population within the Black community that's fed up with their situation. And I mean, it's understandable, but at the same time, it's not necessarily Biden's fault. But I mean, if you're looking at public opinion, the internet sways a lot, and the internet's view of Joe Biden is not good.
I agree with you.
Hey, Johnny,
Well,
John, let me just repeat something that was Charles saying. And you say whenever you guys are out playing tennis together, you discuss what's in the news. You are quite a different character, and you're in a position necessarily where that kind of information is something that you're supposed to be, you know, informed on and by. But when you get out to the general public, people who are working jobs, families taking care of the things that they need to take care of, and particularly when you walk into businesses, the only thing you got on TV is Fox News, then necessarily you're going to have a whole different outlook than someone like yourself and Charles. Um, I look at the internet. I try to gain as much news as I possibly can, and to be frankly honest, they're now reporting that Joe Biden has appointed more than 200 federal judges who are African Americans. You're not going to see that on Fox News.
so Terry, you just is it our choice of media,
It,
or is it that we're just not listening? And then the question, and then back to you, Terry. And then the question is, will we ever listen? Or will we listen before? Do you think that there's anything? I guess there's a question coming up a little later, but is there anything? Is there anything out there that should be done that's not being done in order to drive this change? Let me give you, for instance, like today, Judge Samuel Alito, our friend,
Yeah.
wrote the majority opinion for the South Carolina gerrymandering and race question, entering the gerrymandering and race question. They're going to be there were 30,000 South Carolinians who were removed from one county and placed in another county so that they could maintain the majority distribution of ethnic and racial population in Nancy Mace's district.
That's right.
The question is, are we paying attention to that? Are we paying attention to the franchise being manipulated or taken away from us? Now, they've done some things, but Terry, I hear you. But one of the questions that I have is, often when I've seen it and we've learned about these things, we learned about them too late.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, can I take a crack at that?
Sure.
I think that the information is not being shared on national media.
Mm-hmm.
I watch Rachel Maddow. I watch CNN. I watch other shows and MSNBC. The information that we're discussing right now, as far as that being shared, it is not shared. If it's shared, it's just like a 10-second snapshot, and it's gone. The thing that has been that's controlling it, our news cycles right now is the trials of Donald Trump. The other things that the thing that you just mentioned about South Carolina, that hit early this morning, but I've not heard it since this morning. The challenge that in many your ladies, gents, the statement I'm making is not meant to be whatever, but when we think about the people that control the news media in this country, they're mostly to a great extent going to be Jews to a great extent, and maybe I'm crazy enough to say things. I think our news media is controlled in this country, and it's done to. We talk about propaganda in Russia. We talk about propaganda in other countries, but I would say right here in this country, propaganda is just as alive here as it is anywhere else in the world. The thing about your intro, John, about all the things that's happening in this country, the question is, how could something like that happen, even January 6th, and the masses in this country not be informed about it, not be thoroughly informed? I had a conversation with a young man 2 days ago. We were talking about January 6th. And I said, dude, did you know that on January 6th but he said, well, if January 6th was handled just a little bit better, that it would be okay, that the people should not be tried. I said, man, well, did you know that on January 6th, there were people at the Capitol up in trees with guns? He said, no, I didn't know that. I said, did you know that there was probably 4 to 5 people that died that day and over 100 people were injured? He said, well, no, I did not know that. I'm going like, this is not a question that I posed to him. In my mind, I'm going like, how is it that something that important or that devastating to this country, that information would not be known by the general public?
Let me tell you. I'm sorry, Charles. Let me tell you something that's amazing, an amazing fact to me. I am intrigued at how much this country has changed in such a short period of time. I never thought that I'd see a black president in my lifetime. But the same dynamics that brought that about could be the reason that we're seeing some of the wherewithal that we see now. But here's something that's amazing, that's just absolutely amazing to me when we talk about being in our population being informed. 17% of voters in recent poll believed Joe Biden to be responsible for the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
Wow.
That's astounding to me.
That is astounding.
It's astounding that many people can be that misinformed.
It's that many people watching Fox News.
and
So Quentin, you're a political scientist, and you've been a police chief and for many years. Now, so you have been probably more close to our everyday community than probably any of us. Now, do you think that those of us in the Black community realize how important our votes are? How important our votes are to our everyday lives, to a point that we either choose to or not to participate in the voting process?
Right, and a very good question and very good comments by my panelists as well. And as I'm listening to you all think and hear this question, that's why I just circle back to my initial comment when we talk about does these issues matter? And I said from my circles and even from my experience, I'm saying no. And I want to clarify that no response a little bit better, is that no, it doesn't matter. But the reason that it does not matter, to the point you just asked me, is the lack of in this case, the Black men, the Black community being informed as they should. And there's to me two-pronged issue with that. In some cases, whether it is Fox News, MSNBC, or intermediate platforms, and it was said earlier, those things that are most critical news-wise to Black America is not covered as much as other things. We have the media cherry picking what they think that the Black community want to know, so you don't get as much of it out there. The second problem that you have too, and this is dealing with the Black community, is while all of us on this call and on this panel, we're very interested in what's going on. We stay attuned to what's going on, but we are considered the exception and not the norm. Most of the people that I come across in the community, these things that we're talking about with politics and democracy and things of this nature, it just doesn't interest them, because I think of the complacency that it will always be here, that nothing can happen to us. So it just don't rise to that interest. And when you look at how many more avenues we have to get information now, social media platforms and all these different things to do, and so many other things to take our focus off the real issue, it's just making it harder and harder to keep the Black community informed. You look at how much they're trying to take out of schools. You look at how much has been taught in schools in the first place about politics or Black politics or the rights that we have. It is very limited, and unless, from my experience, people in the community, unless you are purposeful and trying to understand this issue we're talking about, they're just not going to get it. They're going to pick up what they hear from friends and family and maybe a little bit on the news, and they don't research and follow up to find out what's true. So even if they happen to go into a store and see Fox News on, and Fox News make a comment about something, that's it. That's as far as they're going to go, because they're not going to go and research it and find out if it's true. And so at the end of the day, and y'all come in several times, it's just a lack of being informed, adequately informed, properly informed, and therefore I think that is what take away the issues that they need to know, that the Black community are just not concerned with, because they don't have all the information.
Hey, John.
Let me say this. One of the things from the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm sure it applies across the nation, we've moved to a news platform where we've got pundits, we've got people from professional backgrounds making comments on what people out in the public are thinking and are saying. And to be frankly honest, you're not hearing what John Q. Public is saying. You've got somebody telling you what John Q. Public is thinking. And I think Charles is quite correct. The news media picks up on those things that are exciting or excitable, because that's what's necessarily going to drive their ratings. We're not hearing from the John Q. Publics. And I must tell you, sometimes when I'm watching the local news, I mean, you hear about football, you hear about basketball, you hear about boating, you hear about fishing, you hear about all kinds of things, but you're not going to hear that Joe Biden has appointed 200 federal judges that were African American.
Hey, John,
Yes,
it was back to the point. Many people in this country think when the inflation is bad, the news cycle is that people think is upset with Joe Biden because the inflation is up. Now, all of us know that the president has nothing to do with inflation in this country. Well, some of us know that. Inflation is based upon the increase in prices, and to a great extent, I would have to say that inflation is based to some high percentage based upon corporate greed. We also are told that the Federal Reserve raising up the interest rate also is a way to curtail inflation. Well, me, that has never made sense to me, because the only thing that the increase in the interest rate does is increase the price of interest-sensitive transactions. So in effect, when the Federal Reserve increases interest rate, they are inflating the cost. So they are in effect causing inflation. So therefore, the concept behind reducing inflation is to increase the cost of everything, so that people with limited resources will be forced to buy less. So therefore, companies then will reduce their prices so that the people can buy things within their income range. So, but that type of thing isn't taught to people. We're taught that the news media would say, well, this person thinks that Joe Biden's not doing enough to control inflation, but they will never provide information as to what inflation really is. And so that's
Well,
misinformation. Go
well,
ahead. Sorry, John.
well, no, don't be sorry. It's a very good, very, very significant point. But I like talking about the Federal Reserve and inflation. Okay, it's one of my favorite topics. Well, our country, in order for those of us with resources to be better off, there has to be some of us without access to those resources,
Regretfully so.
so that we don't compete for the same goods and services.
Yeah.
And so the way our system works is that in order for our system to hum right along, we need somewhere around 3 to 4% of our population to be in the servant position in the economy, to where we can't compete for the 85-inch televisions, or we can't compete for this new electric truck I want to buy.
You gonna get it?
I don't know, but so what happens is that we know that in order for our country to be better off, some of us have to be worse off. I think it's unfair. We know that this is the way the system works, and we know that these are the tools that we use to curtail inflation, is that we have to penalize the poorest among us by not being hired, not being able to work or provide livings for our families. I think it's an issue in this country because we know that we have to have this in order for the majority of us to be better off. That we don't do a really good job of taking care of those people that we know that the burden of being well off rests on their shoulders.
Well,
I'm
John,
appalled by the number of people that we see in this country that's homeless. I'm even more appalled by the number of people that we've seen in this country homeless that are veterans. People that have gone out and fought, willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. And when they return from their duties, they're living on the street. Something's wrong. Something wrong with that.
but John,
Johnny, you make a very clear statement and argument on inflation and how it operates within the economy. But the problem is that the term inflation and the economy is basically used as a wedge issue.
It is.
And people out in the general public are being told about inflation or being told about what the state of the economy is, and they don't have a clue about what the state of the economy is. But what happens is that the people reporting it, use it as a wedge issue to say whether or not Joe Biden is doing what he's supposed to do or he's not doing what he's supposed to do.
Jump in here, Joshua.
Sorry, my internet keeps going back and forth, so I'm actually behind right now, so I'm catching up. Also, for some reason, Microsoft decided this was the time to do a update, so that's why I was gone for like a minute. It shut off and updated on me. America doesn't have a problem with resources. We have enough. We have enough housing to house everyone in America 2-3 times over. There are enough dilapidated homes here in Jackson that there shouldn't ever be anyone homeless. But the simple fact is that that's not going to be something that people want to fix because, well, they like the fact that they can compare themselves against someone else. I mean, we have the food to feed everyone basically on Earth. We have the land, we have the resources. They're all there. But the concept of scarcity is what gives and makes people, is what creates that divide. So we artificially inflate the scarcity so that we can create a bigger gap in wealth for those that have, so they can basically try and charge, larger rates for it. It's not like we're having an actual lot. It's not like we don't have it. I mean, like we talk about things like gas. We have natural gas reserves. We have regular gas reserves. Most of our gas comes from Mexico and Canada. But outside of the fact of Alaska is one of the largest producers of oil in the world. But we talk about oil scarcity because they want to open up those additional drilling rigs out in the Gulf. and along those coastlines underneath Trump, which Biden shut down. And so after that, you get what, where they had supposedly a terrorist attack on the refineries, the cyber terrorism attack, and gas prices never come back down since. It's not that the
There,
gas prices should be that high. It's just the fact of they're inflating them artificially, and that artificial inflation just let further pushes this corporatization of everything in America. Our biggest issue is not so much even the issue of politics. It's the fact that we allow major corporations to control the major aspects of everything that's going on. We aren't stepping in and regulating these companies because it's an uphill fight. If we start regulating the companies and we start stepping in and actually doing like we need to stop them from doing these different things, they're just going to basically throw enough money so they can put someone back in like Trump. And then basically what they do every single time is every time a Democrat comes in there that's willing to stop them, they throw everything in the economy towards making it look like it's absolute crap.
you
And
know
we
what?
keep seeing it. It's consistent. There's no reason that McDonald's will charge you $5 for a Big Mac. Taco Bell's charging $2 per taco when it used to be 79 cents, and that's just them jumping up the prices for no reason. Horse meat don't cost that,
let,
so
let me
there's no reason for this.
let me give you one though, and I want you to think about this one when we say the no reason, because everything is so interdependent, where one thing depends on another. Do you know one of the leading services that's leading inflation is insurance?
Hello.
Biggest scam ever made. I pay somebody in case something happens,
It is
and then if it does
insurance.
happen, they ain't gonna pay out anyway.
And in the state of Florida, it happened here in Mississippi at one point to where we couldn't find insurance companies to come into the state. This was when we had attorneys like Isaac Byrd and Ed Blackman and some of those guys winning these huge cases. But now the environment is wreaking havoc across the country. I was just looking at what happened to Austin last night, what happened in Iowa the night before.
Mm-hmm.
The devastation is it's tremendous, and it's worldwide, the fires. So what's happening is a lot of this insurance costs, we're absorbing it in all of the commodities and services that we purchase. Someone has to pay for it. And those paying for it are policyholders.
John,
Let me change the subject. Let me
We can
change
go
the
off
subject.
on insurance.
but John,
I got
can I just know,
Blue Cross Blue Shield. I
I
got
wanna change
four
the subject.
doctors I can go to.
John,
I want to
Hold
can I
start
just
off.
know,
I
can I
want to
throw
start
one
this
thing
one
at
off.
you?
I want to start this one off with Quentin.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I want to start this off with Quentin is because Quentin is academician now as well. And what we've seen across the country, Quentin, is that we've seen these protests, this backlash against the U.S. providing munitions to Israel in the Israeli-Hamas war. These young people are protesting, young people and faculty members as well. I have not seen the level of activism on HBCUs that I've seen at TWIs. Is the Israeli-Hamas war an issue in Black communities? Is it a vote-driving issue?
No, and that's a good question too. As I read through these, and I would even circle this back up to the point I made on the first question that we discussed, and at least in the circles that I hear, and when you look around the country, I don't think that it does. I think that obviously, if you were to poll, you would get something that's significant. You poll a Black community, they will know that there is a war. But whether it moves them one way or the other, I just don't think it's that great of an impact. I think what is mindful that they'll pay attention to is some of the strategy and the tactics that Israel has used in terms of the humanitarian piece. that may give more of a concern in terms of killing non-combatants, so to speak, at will and without trying to protect them. But of course, the war itself, again, being on HBCU campus, and I try to read as much different news articles as I can via online, and I may read 15, 20 different news journals and papers, and you just don't hear a lot of talk about that in the Black community. So I don't think at the end that the war itself, I don't think that's going to move the needle very much, whether Black men specifically, since that's what we're talking about, or Black people in the community. I don't think it moves the needle to where they will vote for or against Biden. And I certainly don't think that, and obviously we see this, they haven't moved the needle to have protests on HBCU campuses, because it's something that I don't think just resonate with them, that it's a right or wrong war.
Let me ask you this question. I want Terry, I want you to start off to comment on this one. And Charles, you follow. Do you believe that the Israeli-Hamas war is going to impact the outcome of the election? Young people 19 to 29 is the group that we're talking about. 19 to 29. Do you think that this group will either, what we'll probably see from the group is probably not vote, but do you think that the interest in this war is significant enough that it would impact the outcome of the election? This is white or Black.
I'm going to give you a qualified answer on that, and I don't think necessarily that the war itself is going to impact the election necessarily, because it's a catch-22. If you don't vote for Joe Biden, you wind up with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is more hellish, with regard to the people in Palestine than Joe Biden. And to be frankly honest, it is particularly upsetting to me. And when you look at basically where these protests are taking place, particularly on college campuses, you have to literally be historically informed about those kinds of situations in order to, muster up enough passion to actually start a protest. You're not seeing a lot of protests in the streets of this country, but you are seeing it on college campuses. And the correlation to that is the fact that this is where you get the knowledge about why, that kind of incident is taking place and what the impact of that instance is. Right now, this nation is literally on the opposite side of the International Court of Criminal Justice. Just think about that.
Yeah.
So,
Charles, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Terry.
No, so I believe it's a really horrendous situation. People are upset about it, and I think there's good reason to be upset about it. But does that mean you're going to vote for Donald Trump? I don't think so.
So Charles, I want you to try. Let's try this one first with you, and then with Joshua. Trump it's almost embarrassing to watch the Donald Trump trial. What this guy, what we've seen here is evidence, documentation that this guy is unethical. We have issues of morality. Do you think that the trial is making a difference? Oh, let me rephrase that. We know that it's not right now. Will it make a difference in the long run?
Two things. One is that if he's found guilty, I think it will make a difference. Now, if he's not found guilty, he may even get a bump in the polls. I was reading a book, listening to a summary of a book that were talking about the far right, the religious group. Can't remember the name that was identifying this group, but and they have been supporting Donald Trump for a long time. Their position is that they have an overall goal for this country. They want this country to have embedded in laws certain codes of morality. It has to do with abortions. Has to do with they may not even may pass a law that says women need to wear a dress below their knees, but they have a certain understanding of belief in religion that they wish this country to follow, and they believe that Donald Trump can do that for them. And these other issues that we're speaking about, that they are important issues about treating people like, even remember with the border, he was separating children from their families. They're willing to accept those things as long as they get their end goal, which is that this country follow their beliefs of what God wants for this country. So they're willing to have someone as president that talks about women or disrespect women the way that they do. And so I think that one other thing, John, you posed a question back earlier, and I think Quentin, you responded to, maybe Terry, maybe Joshua, maybe we all did. But John, that was about 3 weeks ago. It was two black young men had come to an office and they were delivering furniture, and the question was addressed to them about voting. And they, guess what both of them said? They said they don't vote. And the next question to them was, well, why don't you vote? Guess what their response was?
I'm waiting to hear this.
It doesn't matter if I vote. And as a matter of fact, John, I would have to say, if you look at gerrymandering, you were speaking about the 30,000 people that got located in districts. Gerrymandering has the ability to take away the power of a vote, or to give more power to a vote. And people are saying that. And also, since we have no accountability once people are elected in office, once a person gets in office, they can do whatever they want. They can even change political parties. And then the people that voted for them can't do anything. So I guess the point I'm getting after, we have some structural problems that we need to address. And until we address those, the things that we see happening in this country, if we have a country left, if Donald Trump wins, well, we'll have a country, but it'll be different. It's debatable as to what that would be.
Well, I would tell you something. Was a comment that was made earlier about young people. They don't get their news from CBS, MSN, and NBC. They're getting their information about the war from Al Jazeera.
Well, John,
which is different. Which is a difference. And that's the point that you guys made earlier. Is that we and they are exceptional. And not the case. Yeah. But here's something.
Let me just give you a comment on the trial. I'm sure all of us remember the violence and all the hatred that was brought forth to Bill Cosby when he was being tried. And when you compare that violence and all that hatred that was being thrown at him, and now look at what's going on with Donald Trump. I mean, you got the Speaker of the House of Representatives going to the trial, basically.
Wow! Yes.
Castigating the judge, castigating the judge's family. I mean, Terry, that's why kids out there are basically saying it doesn't matter.
Let me, Joshua. I want you to pick up on this, and Quentin, if you would follow up with Joshua. I am, every time I think that we've heard it all, we hear something else. Donald Trump has been chasing us from one rabbit hole to the other one for the past, 6, 7, 8 years. We've never been able to focus on anything long enough because he does something so outrageous in the next moment that we forget about what he did before. I don't think this one can be topped. Donald Trump came out yesterday and said that Joe Biden sent the FBI to Mar-a-Lago to assassinate him. Do you know that leaders of the Republican Party are echoing that today? That's dangerous. So my question is, does dishonesty...
Before you ask that question, I want you to think about something else. Donald Trump
Right.
is now waiting on the Supreme Court to basically say that he can have total immunity as president. So why shouldn't Joe Biden try to assassinate his ass?
If
Don't say it.
that's the case.
You're gonna get us on the watch list.
But my question here though is, does dishonesty, does racism and misogyny matter? Does it matter anymore? There was
Yeah,
a
it
time
does.
when there was a rumor. Your chances as a candidate was done.
Joe Biden got knocked out of the presidential election because they said he plagiarized.
So that's my question. Does it matter? Will any of
Yeah.
this
Uh,
matter?
It does. Only in the fact of it sells. The most disaffected people in America are stupid people. And what makes them the most mad about things is that they don't understand what's going on. So when they pick up on something that sounds like sound bites, things that are just interesting to them, or things that just justify every stupid thing that they think, like, oh, well, I'm right about this. And oh, he believes with this. And it's all about that deep state government that's out here trying to destroy us. And it's all about those East Coast intellectuals, which is just code words for Jews, that are all behind it. And so what happens is that this is nothing more than the same repeat we saw in McCarthyism. It's the same repeat we saw in the 1920s and 10. We're looking at the state of Mississippi like Bilbo and the rest of them, where they come out, say the dumbest, loudest things possible to gather all these people together. And the more dumb stuff he says or does, the worse he is, the more he stands out as this exact opposite to the image of what a respectable or a dignified or even a basic human politician is supposed to be. They're rallying against the concept that they don't understand what's going on around them. They are basically like they're like angry older people who are just mad about everything. But it's not just old people; it's young folk too. It's this entire group in America that's been told, "Hey, you shouldn't think this. Hey, this is wrong," and so they know that they're already thinking and feeling this, and so they're looking
But John,
for any outlet that justifies what they're doing. And that's what he stands for. The worse he does and the more he gets away with, the better they feel because they feel like, hey, that's a win for us and how we're getting one over on all of those other people who are ruining America. That's the argument. This make America great again. Everything else, it's the throwback to when they felt like this idea like America was great, America was white, and everybody was prosperous. When basically it's the same issue that they've always had where it's rich people ruining stuff for poor folk and then blaming it on every single other person. This is a rich man who's a corporation who's trying to argue. The man has a damn reality television show. And that's what it is. It's just reality television. And they're buying it. It's like thinking like
Okay.
it's like thinking Kim Kardashian is a business mogul because she's on TV all over the place. She's not making money because of her genius acumen. She's making money because y'all are dumb enough to keep buying this. He is selling freeze-dried steaks at a political level, which he did. He actually sold those crappy Omaha steaks, not Omaha, but the Trump steaks, which were the worst things ever. And that's all he's doing. He's just selling the sizzle to stupid people.
John, in our education,
Steak is one of my favorite meals.
but can I tie this into something? Can I tie this into something, John?
Yes,
The
Charles.
points that Joshua just made, and I think maybe we've all been saying that we tie that back to our education system, our public education system in this country, where we purposely, now this is my position, we purposely do not educate our children, and it's done on purpose, so that we will have a populace that does not critically think. They will believe what you tell them if you make it sound good. And I think we are seeing the culmination of dumbing down the citizen of this country coming to fruition right now. And it is coming home to roost.
I'd like to tag in on something. Ever since Reagan, we have seen this thing about education in America, where once education spread to the common man and into black communities and was growing, we saw rich white people start doing the same thing that they always do, trying to cut funds to education. Because their number one concern is when somebody like me, who is coming from one of these backgrounds, like the rest of us, gets this education, is now actually competing against their child for these jobs. So that's the real issue here. They want to destroy education so that their kids maintain control and they can control and maintain wealth. They don't want the competition.
Hey, John, it's about
Hold on.
maintaining status quo and keeping power
That,
where it is.
that is a worldwide issue, Charles.
Yes, it is.
That is a worldwide issue. I want to close with this question, and this is a Quentin Terry Davis question. I don't understand whenever there's a code word in politics, and the term is law and order. When we hear the term law and order, and that's historically when we hear it, it's meant the increased incarceration of Black males. Am I correct in my interpretation of the code word law and order and increased incarceration of Black males, which is one of the reasons that we see Black men, there's no difference between Republicans and Democrats. Because for Black males, when we hear this term law and order, we see us as the scapegoat. Quentin, then Terry.
Yes, very good question. I do want to take about 10 seconds to have a comment on that previous question as well. And when we talk about just the lies that's being told, my wife and I watched the World War II series and really watched how Hitler came to power. I think that if we were to play that, over and over and over, across the national media, they would see, in my opinion, that Trump is taking the same playbook, and part of Hitler's playbook was just to constantly put out lies that people become numb to them, then think that it can happen. Then, of course, we know how that turned out. As it pertains to law and order, I think it means that you're correct in terms of the mass incarceration of Black men, but I think it's also code for the rich and the wealthy and the connected, because the law and order aspect of it is what I often say is Lady Justice is not wearing a blindfold. She wears the one-eye patch now because you need to see who you're dealing with. And that law and order is to, incarcerate, minorities and poor people. But it's also, when they say law and order, we look at what we're seeing now, is to make that same argument with Trump and saying that I shouldn't be charged and the system is rigged against me. So they're using it as a code word in terms of you punishing me and you shouldn't be. We need to get to real law and order, which goes back to your point, is that it's dealing with the everyday Black folks, poor folks, things of that nature.
Terry.
Make no mistake about it, Richard Milhous Nixon made it very, very clear that when he used the term law and order, he was talking about the incarceration of Black folks. And to put it into context, Richard Nixon basically followed Eisenhower as president. Politically, what you had was the Brown versus the Board of Education decision, 54, 57, and then 70. And at that particular point in time, there was a lot of civil rights activity ongoing all over this nation that white folks felt very uncomfortable with. And Richard Milhous Nixon came in and basically says, we're going to bring about some law and order in this country. And he was basically saying, we're going to tap down on all these demonstrations. And it has followed suit from Nixon right on up to the present day.
I'm certainly hoping, Terry, that we don't see a repeat of what we saw during the Chicago election of Democratic election. I'm trying to remember the candidate's name. The Democratic candidate was Hubert Humphrey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly hoping that we don't see a repeat of that this summer. Guys, I'd like to thank you for such a lively present discussion tonight. I thank you for your expertise and the enthusiasm with which you presented the subject, and I look forward to our next session, which we hope to be the fourth Thursday of July. And so I want us to get to be more reliable in getting these shows done, because I think they're important. I do enjoy them, especially the conversation after we get them going. Charles, these are the kinds of conversation we have on the court, right?
Yes, it is. After we talk trash about that great shot that tennis shot that someone made or did not make.
Hey guys, until next time, thank you guys so much.
All right, very good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the show and I always enjoy joining in.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Joshua.
Thank you. You guys have a great evening, and